Why, hello there, every pony. This is Nightlife again, and today I will be giving you the second story I'm going to be reading. I literally just wrapped up with a first chapter of Antipodes, which I just actually looked up the meaning to, and I didn't quite understand how it related to the story at first. But then again, I've only read 5 chapters, if at the most. And yeah, I've only read like 5 chapters on my own of that story, so I guess it'll be evident sometime. Oh, but I'm getting ahead of myself, or behind myself, as it were. I'm here to give you the second chapter of Steam Gears and Wings by Raven's Dagger. This is chapter 2, Captured and Crashed. So I guess when we left off, little Apple Bloom and Sweetie Belle and Pip were supposedly dead or captured. At least that's what Scootaloo thought, anyways. I wonder what their kitty marks are. Nope, nope. Wait, I'll wait for the canon to solve that. Oh well. Let's get right on to it, shall we? "It's going to ram you!" screamed a familiar voice over the comm. Sweetie Belle was knocked to the ground as the ship shook. The mare looked behind her in time to see Pipsqueak disappearing through the floor hatch. Desperately, she scrambled towards the wheel and attempted to steer the Crusader, but she was far too late. Beyond the viewport, the gigantic frame of the Conformity was quickly approaching. With startling clarity, she saw the entire ship's forward blades slicing into the skin of the Crusader's gas bags. Sweetie Belle froze, unsure of what to do. Before she could make up her mind, she was thrown across the room and landed in a tangled heap of limbs and hooves. The ship spun around and lifted suddenly, as if freed from a large amount of weight. Sweetie Belle grabbed onto the wheel and hung on for dear life as her own ship tried to kill her. Fuck. As suddenly as it began, the bobbing and spinning stopped, and she felt the ship sinking. Through the open hatch, she could see the clouds and sky. Struts and supports ended in jagged spikes. Wires were snapped and frayed. What was going on? Sweetie Belle stared at the open space before the realization hit her. One of the balloons had been cut off. She righted herself and quickly closed the hatch, then tried to contemplate her options through the haze of fear and confusion. 1 second. Alright, I'm back. The engine was still intact, but the prop was gone. Half the ship was missing, and what was left of her end was sinking. Outside, she could see the Conformity maneuvering itself above her. Worst of all, she had no idea where her friends were. No, no, please, Luna, no! Yes! Luna over Celestia! Huh. Sorry, you can tell where my political alignment lies. With a grunt, Sweetie Belle rose and tried to reach the comm. She had to warn Scootaloo. At least one of her friends could make it out to get help. Suddenly, a long, sharp needle pierced through the wall of the cabin to her left, blocking the way between her and the small communications unit in the corner before the barbed tip pulled back and gripped the wall. With a jerk, the ship was moving once more, this time horizontally. Sweetie Belle stumbled over to the windows, feeling like a drunken sailor as the ship bobbed and bounced. Looking out, she could see the open maw of Conformity's cargo hold. She was being swallowed. Too many connotations. Dozens of ponies wearing gray Imperial uniforms dotted the inside of the cargo hold. They fired large crossbows at her ship. Bolts tipped with barbs and tied to strong ropes whizzed from the hold and bit into the Crusader's remaining balloon. Soon, strong earth ponies were pulling her ship. Slowly and surely, the Crusader was being reeled into the open maw of the Conformity. Damn it! Leave us alone! She quickly looked around the cabin for anything she could use as a weapon. Anything. A bar, a pipe, something long and sharp, anything. Twisting and turning in panic, she suddenly saw saw and heard a bumbling red blur fly by. Expedite was still in the air. She smiled sadly. At least one of her friends was going to make it. Her smile disappeared when the cannons of the Conformity swiveled around their positions. "Oh, Luna," she whispered softly. She ran over to the miraculously intact radio, tapped on it with her magic, and screamed into it, "Run, Scoot! Run!" Before she could do anything else, one of the windows shattered, sprinkling glass all over the cabin as the green Pegasus, wearing the typical gray uniform of the Imperial Navy, landed on the deck. The Crusader chose that moment to ram into the conformity. Both ponies skidded across the floor. Sweetie Belle losing her magical grip on the comm unit as it dropped on the floor and smashed itself into a million pieces in front of her eyes. "You are hereby ordered to stop all illegal actions and follow our," started the green Pegasus as he righted himself. She cut him off with a swift punch to his snout. The Pegasus' face jerked upwards as his muzzle sprayed blood onto the cabin's ceiling. She didn't know what had taken her. She had never hit any plane before, but these Imperials deserved it. They had hurt her friends. "Get off my ship!" she screamed at the Pegasus before tackling him in an angry fury of hooves and bites. Ugh, never piss off Sweetie Belle. There may be some truth to Sweetie Bot. She screamed at the Pegasus. She wasn't going to let some no-good imp take her beloved ship and hurt her friends without a fight. More Pegasi poured into the cabin, both from the broken windows and from the floor and roof hatches. Soon, the already small room was becoming suffocatingly packed as it rapidly filled with a dozen Pegasi, all wearing the same oppressive gray uniform. Sweetie Belle stared as their numbers grew. Slowly, she backed into a corner and growled at them, to little effect. One of them pounded towards her, swearing at her as he did so. Acting on reflex, Sweetie Belle picked him up with her magic and slammed him into the metal ceiling. When she looked up and saw a panicking Pegasus, she let him go, letting him fall to. She let go of him, letting him fall with a loud. Let me try that again. When she looked up and saw the panicking Pegasus, she let go of him, letting him fall with a loud thump. "I'm sorry," she squealed. The others looked at each other, then jumped on her as one, ignoring the squirming form of their ally. Sweetie Belle fired off her magic at random, hitting a few of the Pegasi but not doing anything to stop their charge towards her. Within seconds, she was tangled in a pile of hooves as they grabbed and hauled her into the air upside down. From her vantage point, she could see one of the Pegasi she had hit clutching his stomach before vomiting all over the floor. She cringed, both in pity and disgust. You are hereby arrested for," started the same green Pegasus. "Oh, never mind. Haul her in." 3 Pegasi took hold of Sweetie Belle and flew out the top hatch. As they flew in between the two ships, Sweetie Belle looked down at the clouds far below, gulped and stopped squirming. She wasn't afraid of heights, but she realized that they could kill her on a whim as he tried to calculate the huge distance between her and the ground below. The Pegasi flew into the hold in a flurry of beating wings and unceremoniously dumped her on the deck from midair, as if they wanted nothing to do with her now that their job was done. She landed with a small thump and hopped to her hooves, ready to fight. The sight of a dozen ponies the size of Apple Bloom's big brother quickly sucked the will to fight out of her. Sweetie Belle's ears dropped as her eyes widened. "Welcome on board Conformity," said a polite, calm voice. Sweetie Belle looked around and spotted the pony that spoke. He was a tall, well-groomed unicorn with the dark uniform of a high-ranking officer. "I am Darius, the captain of this vessel." He paused to stroke his his mustache and strolled past the circle of uniformed ponies, coming to a stop a few feet from Sweetie Belle and looked down at her, calculating. Sweetie Belle shivered, for his eyes were not filled with malice or contempt, but with envy. "And who might you be, young lady?" I'm Sweetie Belle." She lost all will to fight as the intimidating captain raised an eyebrow at her. She felt like a filly being punished by her father. Interesting. Might you be related to the Bell family, perhaps? He sat down graciously on the wooden deck. His eyes never left hers. Sweetie Belle broke eye contact and looked around once more at the ponies around her. Their respect for the captain was evident in the way they looked at him as if he was a loving father. Yeah, my sister's name is Rarity, she answered timidly, the gravity of the situation starting to sink in. Now both his eyes met at the top of his forehead, as he looked at her, surprised. You are the sister of the famed Rarity? Interesting. Daria's eyes shifted for a few moments to the Pegasi that flew back into the ship, then nodding to an earth pony behind him. The pony snapped a salute before running over to a console and pulling a lever. The ropes that held what was left of the Crusader retracted, and the wrecked part of her ship fell out of sight. Sweetie Belle whimpered as she watched her beloved ship disappear. Suddenly, the Crusader gave a final goodbye as it shifted in the wind and rammed into the conformity. Most of the ponies in the hold, Sweetie Belle included, tipped and fell to the ground. From the ground, she looked up and saw the captain sitting in the same place, seemingly unaffected. Damn, has he got some sea legs on him? Get the repair crew to check the damages, he ordered calmly. I see you managed to injure some of my ponies. He looked over one of the Pegasi that flew in, the Pegasus who was holding a hoof to his bleeding muzzle in an attempt to stop the blood flow. Upon seeing his captain and looking at him, he removed his hoof and to salute him. At ease, the Pegasus gently placed the hoof to his face. As the captain looked Sweetie Belle over, she could feel his calculating eyes as they rolled over her body. All ponies in need of medical attention. Make your way back to the infirmary right away. No exceptions. To the infirmary, sorry. A few Pegasi took off. They shamefully bowed their heads and looked at their co-patriots nervously. Too bad you never joined the good fight. We could use ponies as spirited as you. Good fight? I'm sorry, that's me laughing at them. But then again, he does envy her. But what about her does he envy? We'll see, he said in a loud tone that rang across the room. The Pegasus ponies straightened out their backs and flew a little more proudly. Now, young lady, you will be escorted over to the brig. I suggest you follow these gentle colts nicely and politely. I'll be over with you in a matter of minutes. He turned sharply and walked towards a group of officers that quickly assembled around him, chattering and flooding him with information. Yeah. Sweetie Belle was prodded on the back in a none too gentle fashion by one of the large earth ponies as she started to move forward, giving one last glance to the sky outside as the heavy cargo bay door shut with an echoing boom. The room was suddenly much darker. That was it. She was stuck here, unable to tell if Scootaloo or Apple Bloom made it out alive, or even if they were okay. She was escorted by 4 strong-looking earth ponies who kept silent through the entire journey, only occasionally muttering things to each other. She didn't pay attention. She was unable to do so as her mind twisted and turned in desperation, causing her to shiver from both the sudden loss of adrenaline and the completely different situation she found herself in. She needed some time to think, and the long walk through the winding ship gave her just that. Maybe she could escape. The 4 ponies that navigated her through the maze that was the ship's interior nipped the idea at the bud. What else could she do? Her ship was gone. Her friends were gone. When the thought hit her, she froze on the spot. Pipsqueak and Apple Bloom. Were they really? No, it couldn't be. Her eyes filled with tears as she was pushed along by one of these older ponies. The rest of the trip passed in a daze. Eventually, the 4 ponies slowed to a halt in front of a thick wooden door. An old mare wearing a slightly tattered uniform came running over to the group while jingling a bunch of keys in her mouth. She inserted the key into its lock and ushered them into the dark room. She quickly appeared in the room with a box of matches and went about lighting the small lanterns set around the room. The room, or brig, as the captain called it, was filled with square cells, and the only thing in them were small buckets and simple cots bolted onto the walls. The old mare opened one of the thick wooden doors. Each door had a large bar-filled hole in it. She moved aside, and Sweetie Belle was shoved into the room unceremoniously. Sweetie Belle's eyes filled with tears, and a few uncontrollable sobs escaped. The 4 guards and the old mare left without saying a word. They left the exit door slightly ajar, letting a thin strand of light stream in. She slowly sat down in front of the barred door and leaned her head against one of the metal bars. That was it? That was it? How she was going to end? Stuck in some cell with her friends escaped or died? Sweetie Belle's thoughts drifted over to the joy that they had when on board the Crusader. The fun they had. The memories they shared. All over. She let out a shaky sigh. It couldn't end like this. She would find a way out, and then she would find Scootaloo and Apple Bloom. The 3 would beat the Crusaders again. They would get revenge on those stupid Imperials. After a few minutes of quiet thinking, she heard the door to the room open with a loud grinding creak. 3 sets of hooves headed towards her cell, accompanied by the sound of dangling keys. She quickly wiped her eyes clear of the tears that blinded her, and felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe they're going to let her out. Maybe they realized who she was and were going to free her. She could use her family's name to force them to save Apple Bloom and Pipsqueak. Her hope was crushed when she saw the face of the green Pegasus she had hit on the Crusader. He smiled menacingly at her. "Hello, little filly." She shrank back deeper into the cell. "Oh, don't be scared. We just want to play in you." "Oh, fuck no." He licked his lips as his 2 buddies laughed at his horrible joke. Sweetie Belle gulped. "Did you really think you could just waltz in here, hurt me, and simply be dumped in a peaceful cell like this? No, you have to repay us for what you did. Did you bring any bits? No?" He smiled. "Guess we'll have to find other." Huh? The sentence just cuts off there. Oh well. That's a little thing you made him want to work up there, Ravensdecker. Oh well. He licked his lips again and indicated to one of the Pegasi accompanying him to open the gate. He gave a slight nod, and one of the sneering Pegasi opened the gate. Sweetie Belle noticed a look about the green Pegasus' face. The kind of look Rarity had warned her about. She knew what it meant, and it was not good. Sweetie Belle shrank back against the wall and whimpered, "No." The door slammed open just as the head of the Pegasus whom opened slammed into it. The Pegasus convulsed once, then fell into an unconscious heap, and into an unconscious lump on the ground. Every pony turned to stare at the captain, who had appeared quietly. He simply wiped his hoof on his uniform, then turned his attention to the 2 remaining corporals. Again, a cut-off sentence. "My ship, Corporal Greenlance?" Darius let the body of the unconscious Pegasus flop to the ground. "I think it would do you good to join her. You seem so eager." "Guards, seize these ponies. Shove them into those cells over there." He pointed to the back of the prison. "I want a constant watch over this area of the ship." The 2 burly ponies trotted into the room and snapped at his command. They dragged the 3 speechless or unconscious ponies to the cell at the far end of the small prison. "Please forgive me, Miss Belle. Such a manner of acting is disrespectful and unbecoming of a Navy officer. Please forgive my men." He bowed slightly while she simply nodded, still in shock. "You will be happy to learn that we will be unable to verify your crashed ship until the morning. Weather permitting, of course." Sweetie Belle felt hope well up in her once more. If her friends were alive, they might have time to escape. If... No, cut it off as a period this time. Your little group of smugglers is quite impressive, he said, interrupting her train of thought. She stared at him, jaw slightly open, until she realized how foolish she looked. She closed her mouth with a snap. He picked a piece of paper from within his uniform. Seeing that there are many reports of you smuggling various illegal matters, but not one verification has bore fruit. Not only that, but you managed to destroy both of my requisitors and evade a full-on battle maneuver for almost half an hour, not including the amount of superficial damage caused to the ship caused by random strafing fire. Very impressive. Such talent. The stallion sighed and crumpled the sheet of paper. Wasted on mere smugglers. You could have been such an asset to the Imperial Navy. Bullshit. The Resistance, more like it. With his head down, Darius walked out of the cell. You said your sister is Rarity, right? Sweetie Belle blushed and nodded. Good, he knew her sister. If he knew Rarity, he knew how important she was. Very well then. If you really are the younger sister of the illustrious Rarity, then I'm certain you will spend very little time in court. Your name has saved you, young lady. He started walking away, but Sweetie Belle stopped him. She needed to know. Wait, my friends. They were in the other part of the ship. He stopped and regarded and regained his calculating look for a few seconds. If they were within the cabin at the time of the crash, it's likely they survived. We won't be going down there until the morning. They will have likely vacated the premises by then. If they are alive, of course. Sweetie Belle was torn between relief and worry. One of them, Apple Bloom, is the sister of Applejack. Knowing that Rarity was her sister had impressed him. Maybe now he would hurry up to help Apple Bloom. His eyes grew wide. The Applejack? She nodded. What an interesting little group. The captain trotted away with a bemused smile adorning his face. Line break. Dun dun dun. Apple Bloom awoke with a groan. She shifted her head gingerly from off the now smashed radio set, and groaned again upon seeing the state it was in. The expensive device was cracked, ripped, and busted beyond repair. She simply stared at it for a few minutes, wondering what had happened to cause it to break and how she was going to fix it. Better fog in my throat. Sorry. 1 second. Suddenly, she remembered everything. She vividly remembered every part of the short and brutal fight. She was at the radio station now. Her memory was still a little fuzzy. Why was she here? Had she run to the radio to call for help? Maybe to surrender. She couldn't remember. With a groan, she collapsed her head in her hooves. A dial popped off in front of the set with no warning and landed near her. She lifted it up with a forehoof and placed it back into its slot, only to have the entire faceplate crack. She started sobbing. The more she looked around her, the more pain she felt. Everything was broken. Apple Bloom heard with a groan from above, which shook her out of her reverie. Standing up, she trotted out of the small compartment, wiping her eyes as she walked. The spark generator was a mess. Wires and tools were scattered everywhere. A few apples rolled around the metal grating. Daylight streamed into the room where a wall once was, while wires dangled and sparked on contact with each other. She started calculating the time it would take to fix. Her heart sank. The groan came again. This time she was able to pinpoint the location. She tried over to the hatch, avoiding the live wires and broken struts as she made her way to it. Once there, she forced the rusty hatch open, making a mental note to remember to oil it. Apple Bloom grabbed onto the ladder and hoisted herself up and out of the hold. What she saw made her gasp. Blinded as she was by the sun, she couldn't help but notice that the Crusader was no longer there. All that remained were jagged edge, rusted metal struts that stretched upwards into the sky. No, she groaned. Help me, said a small, muffled voice from her side. She stopped looking up and took in her surroundings. She was on top of what was left of the Crusader. Around her, pieces of metal tarp, as well as various parts of her ship, were sprawled across the desert sand, glinting as the sun reflected off them. She found the source of the call: two white and brown legs sticking out from below the still deflated gas bag. The still deflating gas bag. Was that Pipsqueak? How was he? She shook her head and tried to clear her thoughts. She had to help him. Please don't let him be impaled. Please don't let him be impaled. Please don't be impaled. Apple Bloom looked around for a way down from the top of the hold that had sunken itself into the soft sand. The ship, or what was left of it, was tilted on a soft angle. One end sunk into the sand, with the other jutting out. She ran off the roof of the cabin and over to Pipsqueak, who was still struggling with the tarp and ropes that enveloped him. She cocked an eyebrow at the almost comical scene until he whimpered again, sensing her presence nearby. Apple Bloom jumped back into action, shushing him and lifting the folds of the giant bag. Thanks, he panted once he had squirmed out. His white face had turned red. His eyes were teary, and he looked like he had been in one nasty fight. Are you all right? Apple Bloom noticed his hooves and lifted it one to inspect it. They were severely burned by the friction of the rough tarp. What happened? Pipsqueak looked down, ashamed. Sweetie Belle told me to go down when she saw the conformity coming. I wanted to stay with her, but he coughed in his hoof and silently wiped a tear away, trying to hide his emotions from the mare. Apple Bloom put a hoof on his shoulder. It's all right. We'll be fine. She looked once more at the smoldering wreck around her and the endless expanse of desert. I hope, she added in a whisper. This was not the type of scenario she was used to being in. Nothing in her life had prepared her for this kind of event. Her friends were always there for her. Now that she was stuck with a useless colt in the middle of the desert with no help in sight. Apple Bloom frowned determinedly. She could make it. She simply had to rely on herself. That would be easy, right? They both heard a loud crunching sound from above. As they looked up, pieces of metal fell from the sky and landed with heavy thumps on the sandy ground mere meters away from them, sending small clouds of dust and sand into the air. We need to get inside. Pipsqueak pushed her towards the metal wreck. Apple Bloom guided him around and into the cabin from above, hopping into the still open hatch. Hurry up! More chunks of metal and tarp fell from the otherwise clear sky, landing with booming thumps on the wreck's roof. Once they were both secure within the shuttle, he turned towards her and asked, "What was that?" while indicating to the fragment of metal. She wondered the same thing. What the heck could be falling from the sky like that? And then an old memory came back to her, of talking to her sister when Rarity came back from the war. Her eyes filled with tears. She turned away from Pipsqueak to hide her face. The Crusader. What? I heard that the Imperials capture ships and empty them. Then they let them drop to the ground below, unless they can use it. She coughed into her hoof to regain her composure. That's what's left of the Crusader. Damn it! He punched the wall. He punched the wall. The wall, which hummed and vibrated under the impact, making him scream in surprise as surprise and pain as he cracked his injured hooves together, or cradled his injured hooves together. She approached him and pushed one hoof aside with her own, inspecting his hooves again. This time, taking her time looking at the injuries, Pipsqueak blushed furiously as her coat touched his. What did this? She asked. I was sliding on the gas bag. I tried to grab on. Rope burns. Well, sorta. She let go of his hooves and turned back. Let's go fetch something to help you. Then we can figure out what to do. The Imperials won't stay up there forever. she said with a firm resolve that surprised her. It's only 8 o'clock. Wow, yawn, sudden everybody. He listened to her, giving her all of his confidence. Suddenly, she felt pride in herself. She wasn't the type to lead, but maybe she would be good at it. Her determination to get them out of there alive was quickly increasing. We need to pack up. We can't just stay here. She led them down through the ship into a small bathroom. The small, clean room had everything one would expect of it, as well as a few commodities. She popped open a first aid kit and started bandaging his hooves. They both worked quietly, still deep in mourning and thought at the loss of Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo. I saw Scoot get away. She broke the silence. He looked at her questioningly. On the radar, Extradite flew tight out of range, towards New Appaloosa. I don't think they'll catch her. She can be fast when she wants to. He nodded in response. The ship shook as something very heavy thudded against the ground nearby. They looked at each other. I'm done. We can rebandage it later. First, we ought to pack up. She said almost stubbornly. He nodded again, and walked out of the room silently on his now padded hooves. Get to your room. Take only what you really need. The rest we will fill with water and apples from the hold. She made sure he had understood, and then headed towards her own room. The door was locked. She searched around the many pockets of her garments in vain. Crap. Need help? Pipsqueak approached her from his own, which was just around the corner. Nah, I'm fine. With a quick twirl, Apple Bloom twisted around and delivered an apple family buck to the door, leaving it in a splintered wreck. Kaboom! Thanks. You didn't need to help me. I can handle myself. He blushed slightly, and turned around, limping back to his room. Apple Bloom shook her head at his silliness, then pushed the door open and walked into the cool room. There was a bunk, a vanity, and a few shelves and a drawer, a few shelves and drawers for the few items she could fit on board. She quickly sunk herself into one of the drawers and removed a trusty brown saddlebag, a gift from her sister, which she tossed it unceremoniously to the ground and went about searching the room. She took only what she thought she needed: a change of clothes, a warm blanket, a sharp working knife, some tools, some manuals and maps, as well as the first aid kit she had used on Pipsqueak. Finally packed, she huffed and looked around. This would be the last time she saw this room. Apple Bloom trotted out of the room and began heading towards Pipsqueak's when something caught her attention. Inside Sweetie Belle's very pink room was a vanity where a letter sat. It hadn't been moved from where she had left it, remaining completely undisturbed by the events, as if to cement its importance. Oh fuck, man. It's gotta be like a magic letter or something. Walking over the piles of stuff on the ground, she headed to it and saw the stains her best friend's tears had left on the brittle paper. For a few seconds, she stared at it, undecided, then picked it up with her forehoof, folded it, and tucked it deep into her saddlebags. With a grunt, she trotted out the room, wearing the heavy bags, and headed to the fore of the wrecked ship. Yeah, y'all get to hear me stumble, and sputter all over my words. Her. Once at the radio station, she searched the ground below the huge comm unit until she found a small portable radio laying upside down on the ground. It was square, bulky, and had quite a few dings and dents, but it could communicate over miles of land. She smiled and dumped the heavy object into her bag, balancing it over the saddle. She made her way back through the lopsided wreck and into the cargo hold. The hold was a mess. Cases of apples had been crushed, leaving a pulpy mess all over the once spotless floor. She sighed upon seeing the mess and tried not to imagine the conversation she was going to have with her sister about it. Pipsqueak appeared over one of the many tipped boxes and beckoned her over with a wave of his hoof. Huh. We have water and plenty of food. We should have enough if we use it wisely and pack as much as we can. He handed her some water bottles and stared at the floating radio. What's that? A radio. It might come in handy. But it looks real heavy. Oh, it really is. And are you sure we can carry it over a long distance? He asked with genuine concern. Aw, you're such a gentle Pip. Thanks for the offer. She dropped the device in his hooves with a bemused look. Mares, he muttered as he tried to find a place in his bags for the machine. They inspected each other's bags, making sure that nothing was missing or badly packed. Once satisfied, the two made their way out of the ship, this time borrowing the cargo hold's main opening. With a little grunting and some digging out, they managed to open the door halfway and squirm out. The sun was warm, almost at its peak in the cloudy sky. Where to? Asked Pipsqueak, shielding his eyes from the shimmering sun. Beams of light were glinting off the sand, and made everything sparkle blindingly bright. Over there, Apple Bloom pointed to another balloon. It was red with the crests of the Keymark Crusaders. Parts of the pilot station were still visible poking out of the sand. All right then, he nodded. They both gulped and hoped that they wouldn't find anything disastrous. As they made their way across the warm sand, their anxiety grew and became nervous at what they would find in the crashed ship. They both worried about the safety of their friend, but were too afraid to voice that worry to each other, lest they seem cowardly. Pipsqueak reached the ship first. He climbed onto the metal cabin and started looking for a way in. The cabin had hit bottom first, so the windows of the piloting station at the fore were still visible. Most of the ship was covered in the tattered remains of the balloon. How do we get in? Panted Pipsqueak when Apple Bloom arrived. Instead of giving him an answer, she grunted. She searched the ground near the ship. He tilted his head and gave her a questioning look. With an "Aha!" She lifted a piece of metal from the sand and tried it over to the window. She lifted the piece above her head and guided it down and into the glass window, piercing it through and spreading dozens of cracks throughout. She smiled at Pipsqueak, who suddenly stared at her amazed. What? We're not going to use that window anytime soon. Right. He hopped into the hole and gingerly avoided the piles of sharp glass as he made his way to the back of the cabin. No ponies here. He sighed in relief. He walked over to a yellowish-green puddle in the floor and sniffed it. He recoiled and wrinkled his nose. Ugh, puke. Whose? Not Sweetie Belle's. Scoot didn't cook last night. The two shared a small smile despite the situation. Maybe it's Imperial? Let's hope so, said Apple Bloom. Sweetie being captured was better than the alternative. Her family should be able to get her out if they caught her, I think. Apple Bloom looked around the destroyed cavern. The wheel was crooked, the floor was wavy, and had burst open in a few places. The main engine was damaged beyond repair, spewing gas and oil into little puddles. She forced herself to act brave as a wave of pain and sorrow hit her. She had lost two friends and the thing they called home, all within a few hours. She coughed and tried to regain her composure. Pipsqueak looked away, blushing. She coughed one last time, then started searching around. She quickly found a map of their whereabouts. Look here, Pip. She pointed along the red line. We should be around here. If we head this way, she scrolled across the line and patted her hoof on Ponyville. We should make it in 2 days, 3 at the most. But Scoot went south, towards New Appaloosa. She pointed out the trajectory they that they would need to take to reach the city. Add another week of travel in the desert with limited supplies. All right then, Ponyville it is. She sighed and looked outside at the sun that was now cresting in its high point of the day. Let's get going. Waiting here won't help any. We have a long way to go. And that's it for this chapter. Page break and author's notes. See, this is a nice little in-betweener of the short and the long. This is the mediums. Author's note. Special thanks to... this is the same Pony Pie as last time. Oh well, this has been Nightlife here, giving you the second chapter of Steam, Gears, and Wings. Captured and Crashed. By Raven's Dagger. Ooh, that's a very nice picture. Of apparently Raven's Pony Sona with what looks like a Wacom tablet. Wacom pen tablet. That's pretty cool. Alright, I'm going to take about an hour's break, then get off to the other stories I'm on. Alright, see y'all later, Pony. Party hardy.